Today is Thursday, August 14th. We'll tell you how President Trump's Washington, D.C. takeover could expand even more, and the White House's latest legal win that means cutting billions more dollars in foreign aid. Also, which celebrities are being honored at the Kennedy Center after President Trump weeded out the ones he considered too woke. Plus, another boost in American manufacturing, an especially good year for fireflies, and a utopia for horror fans that opens today. Those stories and even more news to know next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. The number of National Guard troops in the nation's capital is growing by the hundreds. And starting today, federal officers are going to be on the streets 24 hours a day. Hundreds of Homeland Security, FBI, and DEA agents have been seen on patrol already. And protesters have been gathering to object and warn people approaching checkpoints. Things are ramping up just days after President Trump's unprecedented announcement that his administration would take over the city's police department for at least 1 month. President Trump says he might even try to keep control for longer by declaring a national emergency, or he could call on Congress to take authority over city laws. Remember, Trump says crime in D.C. is at emergency levels that only federal intervention can fix. But city leaders pointed to statistics that show violent crime is at a 30-year low, and that what they really need is more money to recruit and hire more city police officers. The federal push also includes clearing out encampments for people who are homeless. They're being offered the chance to go to shelters and get addiction treatment if needed, but those who refuse could be fined or put in jail. Trump still says this could all be a model for other U.S. cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York City. So stay tuned. President Trump spoke to European leaders and agreed on a strategy for what could end up being a defining moment of his presidency. We're talking about the meeting planned with Russian President Vladimir Putin tomorrow at a military base in Alaska. It's being described as the most significant negotiation between Russia and the West since Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. So Trump spoke with many of his European counterparts about it yesterday. And during that call, the American president agreed not to negotiate any territorial issues, acknowledging that Ukraine must be involved in those kinds of conversations. He also agreed that a ceasefire would have to be a prerequisite for any further talks. And he apparently accepted that the U.S. would offer Ukraine some kind of security guarantees as part of any potential peace deal with Russia. Trump called the meeting productive and threatened Russian President Putin with very severe consequences if he didn't agree to stop the war in Ukraine after tomorrow. If tomorrow's meeting goes well, Trump says he wants to hold a trilateral meeting between himself, President Putin, and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky right away to kickstart peace talks. The Trump administration got the go-ahead to suspend or end billions of dollars of funding that Congress had approved for foreign aid. A federal appeals court sided with Trump's team yesterday, though to be clear, the court did not consider whether it was actually legal for the government to overrule Congress's spending powers. The question here was whether the grant recipients who sued had a legal basis for the court to hear their claims. And in a 2-1 decision, the appeals court decided they did not. So with that, the White House can keep withholding the money. It includes nearly $4 billion for global health programs and more than $6 billion for HIV and AIDS programs. International aid groups say this could cause a humanitarian crisis, with millions of people dying because of it. But this is part of the Trump administration's crackdown on what it considers to be waste, fraud, and abuse. Either way, this might not be the end of this fight. Grant recipients say they're going to keep challenging the Trump administration in higher courts before the funding expires at the end of the fiscal year. The federal government is facing more pressure over the conditions at immigration detention centers. For starters, there's the new Florida facility known as Alligator Alcatraz. In a new lawsuit filed yesterday, migrants detained there and their lawyers say the tent camp has become squalid, without enough food or a place to bathe or clean their teeth. And lawyers say they've struggled to reach their clients to exchange legal documents, meaning they sometimes miss key deadlines. But the Homeland Security Department says any allegations of inhumane conditions are not true and that the facility meets federal standards. Also this week, a federal judge ordered U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to improve conditions at a holding cell in New York City. Lawyers say migrants there have been held for days in crowded rooms without beds, enough food, medication, hygiene products, or access to showers. But the government argued the migrants have been given adequate food, clothing, and shelter, and that most are moved out of the facility within 72 hours anyway. Well, the judge sided with migrants, saying each person will have to have at least 50 square feet of space and a clean mat to sleep on, among other conditions. There have also been allegations of inhumane conditions at other ICE facilities, but the Trump administration says they're all fiction and that in a lot of cases, these facilities are better than ones that detain Americans. Dozens more sites are being built or repurposed now as part of President Trump's immigration crackdown. This week, Tennessee has been dealing with historic rain and flash flooding. It shut down interstates, stranded cars, and led to several water rescues. Sadly, at least 3 people died in the storm. And the rain is not over just yet. Millions of people are still under a flood watch across much of Tennessee, eastern Kentucky, and parts of the Carolinas. More heavy rain capable of causing some scattered local flooding is also forecast over parts of the Gulf Coast. Meanwhile, thousands of miles to the north, another issue has sparked flooding concerns in Juneau, Alaska. An Alaskan glacier burst and melted ice caused record floodwaters to threaten Alaska's capital. Thousands of people were told to evacuate. But the good news is emergency barriers seem to have worked to funnel floodwaters away from neighborhoods, and it's believed not much damage was done. Though many people who live in the area have not been able to see for themselves just yet. The flood warning is set to expire this morning. More news still coming up, but first, thanks to our sponsor, Trade Coffee. I've enjoyed coffee for a long time, but since I started getting it from Trade, it's been an extra delight in my mornings. So much so that my husband literally went from never drinking coffee to making it a morning must-have as well. We love getting unique, delicious, and high-quality blends from top roasters around the U.S. And lately, we've been loving cold brew. Cold brew at home used to feel like a whole thing until I tried Trade. Get this, they deliver beans specifically for cold brew, so it tastes just right. Plus, they have the gear to make it super simple. They grind the coffee for me so I can just scoop it into the pitcher with enough water, store it in the fridge overnight, and wake up to something that tastes as delicious and refreshing as the one I could get at my favorite coffee shop. No wonder Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the U.S. for both hot and cold coffee drinkers. For a limited time, Trade is giving 50% off a month of cold brew. That's around 60 cups of cold brew for 50% off when you go to drinktrade.com/newsworthy. That's drinktrade.com/newsworthy to get 50% off, half off 1 month of cold brew. drinktrade.com/newsworthy. Now back to the news. Today marks 90 years of retirement as we know it in the U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt signed Social Security into law on August 14, 1935. Before that, Americans had no meaningful way to plan for an income after work ended, since large-scale pensions and retirement savings programs also did not exist. When most people stopped working, they either relied on their families or became impoverished. And roughly half of America's elderly population lived in poverty. Now it's down to about 10%. With nearly all American workers contributing to Social Security, with the expectation they will also receive a benefit. The program offers financial protection not only to retirees, but also disabled people and people who have lost their spouse or parent. But as it turns 90, Social Security is at a crossroads. The program's retirement trust fund is expected to be depleted in 2033. So it's up to Congress to take action, or else benefits will be cut. For the first time in American history, the U.S. national debt has surpassed $37 trillion. It's a milestone that happened years sooner than expected. But deficits have piled up as the federal government's borrowing and interest rates have grown. The debt skyrocketed during the last Trump and Biden administrations, largely because of pandemic-era stimulus bills. The debt is only expected to get worse in the coming years because of President Trump's Big Beautiful Bill, since remember, it extends and enhances many tax cuts. The Congressional Budget Office estimated the law would increase the national debt by more than $4 trillion over the next decade. But Trump administration officials say the money they bring from new tariffs will offset that cost quite a bit. To be continued. Another major company is planning a major boost in American manufacturing. GE Appliances announced plans to shift production of refrigerators, gas ranges, and water heaters out of China and Mexico, and instead it's making a $3 billion investment to expand operations here in the U.S., specifically in Kentucky, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina. And the plan is expected to create 1,000 American jobs. Of course, this comes as President Trump tries to lure factories back to the U.S. with tariffs on goods made elsewhere. Other big companies that have recently announced big U.S. investments include Ford, Apple, Eli Lilly, and many more. The next class of Kennedy Center honorees was revealed this week. They were the first ones announced since President Trump took over the 54-year-old performing arts complex. So there are some changes. For starters, President Trump says he'll host the ceremony. He was also heavily involved in who was chosen and says he rejected several of the prospective honorees for being, as he put it, wokesters. In the end, he chose the actor Sylvester Stallone, the rock band Kiss, country music legend George Strait, disco star Gloria Gaynor, and actor Michael Crawford, who originated the role of Phantom in Broadway's Phantom of the Opera. This year's ceremony is set for December. It will air on CBS. Starting today, it's Halloween all year long. At least that's the case in Las Vegas, where Universal's year-round haunted house just opened up. It's called Universal Horror Unleashed, and it actually features 4 haunted houses, often based on horror films like The Exorcist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. One is dedicated to movie monsters like Dracula, the Mummy, and Frankenstein's monster. There are also some immersive areas between the houses with their own themes and original characters ready to talk to guests. And there are plenty of spooky food and drink options, even some that are a little grotesque. Universal has a second location already planned. It's set to open in Chicago in 2027. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Thing to Know Thursday. But first, this episode is sponsored by Honeylove. Do yourself a favor and stock your closet with Honeylove's essentials. Whether it's finding that just right bra for every day or getting shapewear that makes you feel great in a dress, Honeylove has it all. And it's all so supportive, comfortable, and stylish. In fact, when I wear anything from Honeylove, I can instantly tell so much thought went into every aspect of the piece. From the feel of the fabric, to the function and extra features, to the fashion and quality. Honeylove's shapewear, for example, it's designed to move with you, so no more pulling it down or up anytime you walk around or dance. It just feels like part of a great outfit. So treat yourself to the most comfortable and innovative bras, shapewear, and tanks on earth and save 20% off site-wide at honeylove.com/newsworthy. Use our exclusive link to get 20% off, honeylove.com/newsworthy. And after your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, so please support our show and tell them we sent you. Experience the new standard in bras, shapewear, loungewear, and more with Honeylove. Now back to Thing to Know Thursday. Depending on where you live, you may have noticed this is an especially good summer to see fireflies in the U.S., or as some people call them, lightning bugs. Rainy, damp weather in the eastern half of the country has boosted firefly populations, and warm, humid nights make for ideal viewings. Once the sun goes down, fireflies use their characteristic flashes to communicate and find the perfect mate, meaning people get to see the show. But again, it all depends on where you live. Fireflies are most common in rural areas in the Midwest, Northeast, and Southeast. In urban areas and in the West, fireflies are more of an endangered species. Still, there are 175 species of fireflies in the U.S., and only 18 are considered to be threatened with extinction, mostly because of light pollution, pesticide use, and drought related to climate change. For your best chance at seeing them, entomologists suggest turning the lights off at night and avoid spraying lawns with insecticides. Oh, and even though many of us grew up catching fireflies in jars, they suggest it's best to catch, then quickly release, or just sit back and watch them do their thing. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the show. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.